Everyone. So we're so excited to have Dr. Richard Porcher with us tonight. He's a South Carolina native, an esteemed botanist, and senior author of a guide to the wildflowers of South Carolina, as well as other helpful field guides, historical texts, and botanical books, including Wildflowers of the Carolina Low Country and Lower PD, and as well as our Lost Heritage, History of the Peoples in the St. Johns Basin in Berkeley County, South Carolina. As a biology professor, he helped mold the minds of students at the Citadel and has continued to be active, influential, and inspirational in our community. Recently, he's assembled a team of historians and archaeologists to conduct a cultural history of the Santee Delta. Porcher is also currently photographing the wildflowers and plants of South Carolina with 1,600 different species already documented, and these photographs have been placed in the public domain. So thank you for that. Finally, he will introduce two exciting new projects tonight: his upcoming wildflower book and a collaborative effort with state botanists titled "A Guide to Saving South Carolina's Rarest Native Wildflower." So join me in welcoming Dr. Porcher.
Yeah, can you all see all those?
Yep, we're fine.
I think I need to stand over.
You gotta stay.
I can't stand behind the podium.
Okay, just near the microphone.
Oh, no, oh.
Soon, remember, soon.
Botanist are untethered. We can't stand, oh, this is gonna be horrible. I can't see this. Oh, wait a minute. I may have to move this up. I'll tell you what, can we turn this a little more like this?
Is everybody here? Everybody here?
Make sure this is, all right. Yeah, a little feedback. Well, we'll talk about the work that went into a guide to the wildflowers of South Carolina, which I was the second author, Pat the first, and we had Doug Rayner and Mr. Watt. Let me tell you where all this started. It started back in 1995 when they did the Low Country book. And when you do a book and you open up that box, or you send USA Press a manuscript, a jumbled up thing, then they send you back a box, you open it up, and there's that beautiful book. That's it, you're hooked forever. That's what you're gonna do. I tell people, I am what I write. Basically, that's what I'm doing. So we did that book, and so the minute I saw it, I called Doug Rayner and said, Doug, let's do a state wildflower book. This is Dr. Rayner from Walford. He said, let's do it. I called USA Press, and they said, go ahead. So there's the book we did, Wildflowers of South Carolina. That was the state book, went through 4 or 5 printings, and then, next slide, I got a call the month of COVID from USA Press. We want an updated wildflower book. We want it done in 8 months. It's impossible. I had a whole bunch of slides that have been taken over the years. So I had all my digital slides, but still I had to do a lot more digital slides. So no way that I could do the text and finish up the photograph. I said, who do I call? Pat Vanilla. Been my buddy for years. So I turned the text over to him. I finished up the wildflower. There's my buddy Pat. And so when it was 8 months, we finished up the new revised book. So it was a master. It took us all the time up there. I went all over the state photographing day in and day out. Sometimes I drive up to the mountains, photograph a plant, come all the way home the same day when we got it out. So, and this is something Pat put together, show you how diverse wildflowers in South Carolina are. The 3 states here, North Carolina and Georgia, about twice the size of us, but we generally have just about the same number of species. Native 28, 32, something. So we have a very, very diverse wildflower population in the state of South Carolina. So that is what we feature as much as we could, something like 1,000 plants in the new book. Now I became a gopher again. You know what a gopher is? When I was in Carolina, I was Dr. Baxter's gopher. Richard, go photograph that for me. Richard, go drive the bus for me. Richard, go check out that young lady over here. So I was Dr. Baptist go. Then I went to the Citadel, Professor. I had my little gophers running around and doing things for me. And then lo and behold, we start this book. Meanwhile, about to come again, a gopher. Pat says, Richard, we need this plant, go photograph it. Richard, we need that plant, go photograph it. So I became Pat's gopher. And there is a little plant, a gopher again. And we go there, down in the water photographing Liliopsis. So anywhere Pat wanted me to go, climbing mountains, in the water, in the swamps. So I was able to finish up the plant for the bug. And when you ever see a field botanist, it is serious stuff. I bet you'll never see that and never will again. So wherever I went, that was the horse you're making, took the camera with me, photographing plants. So everywhere I went, the camera went. One thing we did in the new book with Mr. White and digital photography, we could do inserts. So every slide you take, put in the book, costs something. But we're able to do inserts with the new type of cameras. So we did a lot of plants where we simply put the fruit with the flowers, so that counted only as one image. So it cut down. The book costs about $30,000 to $40,000, by the way. So that saved us a lot of money. And what I try to do is show you, this is an orchid, it's very similar to this one. But see the little wavy part right here, that petal is wavy. So I make sure I photograph the orchid and try to show that little, dang it, that little wavy petal. Up here it doesn't have that wavy petal. So I try to photograph the features of the plant. Trying to photograph the features of the plant. I help you identify them. You need to time it. Anybody got a rope? Doesn't you bring a rope with you? All right. And one reason I got Pat, look, see, you got all the name changes. There's something like 40% of the names I taught my cadets years ago have changed. So instead of it was Hepatica Americana, now it's Anemone Americana. If you may disagree, but still, we brought up all the names to the present nomenclature. But I will never call Spartina Sporobolus. That's a plant on the coastline. It will never be Sporobolus to me. So some of the things that hell with them. All right. So we're going to go from the mountains to the seashore. There is the area called the mountains, Piedmont, coastal plain made up of the sand hills, in the coastal plain, out of coastal plain, and maritime strand. That's what we did. We covered the entire state of South Carolina. And there's the granitic dome, and there's Sheely's mountain lettuce. I named that after Harry Sheely, a friend of mine, a botanist. So I started the photographing up at the top of the mountain, and we're all the way down, not just one same day, but basically we covered the entire state as best we could. And there's Harry Sheely's mountain lettuce up on the top of a granitic mountain. And here's my buddy Harry Sheely. Some of you may know Harry, I don't know. So that's the plant that Pat named in Harry's honor. Ragweed? You named a ragweed after me? Not an orchid, not a lily. We grew up, stepping over ragweed up there in the mountains. Anyway, Pat named that ragweed in my honor, and there it is up in the mountains. There's a ragweed right along there. But it's still an honor for to have a plant named in your honor, because it'll be there hopefully forever, unless somebody tries to change the name, but better not do that, I'll come back upon. So there's up in the mountains, the Porcher's ragweed. Down in the Piedmont, the beautiful outcrops. When it rains in the springtime, these little pools fill up, and all of a sudden they just bursting with these rare plants. So that is 40-acre rock along the coastline and in the Piedmont, South Carolina. The sandhill, people don't believe it, but the sandhill have a tremendous variety of wildflowers. So but many days up in Chesterfield County, the parks up there, photographing all the wildflowers Now, we did the same thing we did in the first two books. We grouped the plants by their natural community. You can do a book by color, the flowers, the family. We prefer the natural community because we want people to understand that plants occur underneath in certain types of habitat. So we followed what I did in the first book. We grouped the plants in their natural community. So here you see the lonely pine, turkey oak sandhills. And Pat went in and described each community and had a photograph. So hopefully people will pick up the community concept as much as possible in our book. And there's Eastern Green Eyes. Down what can you name a plant like that in my honor? How can you change the name of that? All right. Anyway, coastal plain, lovely pine savanna. There's the pine lily. This is what Pat and I love. We love the lovely pine savannas, the picture plants, the orchids. So we had a wonderful time photographing down in the country in the lovely pine savannas. Then we get to the seashore, the maritime strand. Now, Native Americans, 5,000 years ago, created three kinds of shell deposits from the shells that they were using. Well, they used the meat for the food and cast the shells around. They created shell rings, shell mounds, and shell middens. The middens is where here's a shell midden. They lived in these hummocks and scattered their shells from the food around where they lived, and that created a high calcium community site. And so a certain group of plants thrived in that calcium site. So we had to study these shell middens off the coast of South Carolina. And here's how we did it. Pat is pretty brave, by the way. You know how brave he is, because he had to fly with me. I was the pilot. Don't ever fly with me. I can't fly in right now anyway. So there's a plant called southern sugar maple that in November turns right orange. So wherever the Native Americans lived in a hummock, they cast the shells out, and a plant called southern sugar maple became colonized. And you can spot southern sugar maple in November because of the brilliant red leaves. So we'd fly the coastlines, and every time we sail those offshore islands with their brilliant red, we'd mark it. Then we'd go back out later on and study the plants out there. That's what we wanted to do. Nobody had, and we produced what we call a maritime shell forest. Maritime shell forest. We're the first one to identify that community as maritime shell forest. But it was put there because Native Americans lived in these offshore islands or marsh islands, flew the shells around them, created a habitat that these plants thrive in. So that's a new community that Pat and I developed or came up with. And then there's Belchamp skullcap, shell midden morning glory. There's certain plants that really thrive in those middens and nowhere else. Here's a plant, Orabanchi. Now, this is a rare plant. What do you think?
Walk away and see if they can hear you.
Can it get this far away? I'll figure it out. All right, this is a rare plant.
I think I can hear.
I couldn't find it anywhere. Looked for years and years and years for this Orabanchi. Wanted it for the book. So I had every botanist in the state looking for the plant for me. Everywhere they went, they'd look for the plant. Almost time to go to press, no one had been able to find it for me, up in the Piedmont. So I got a call from Pat one day. Richie, guess what I found? I found spotted call root up in the mountains of Virginia. So I said, well, I didn't have it. I'm trying to photograph every wildflower that I can. So I drove up to North Carolina. We drove up to Virginia. Get out the car. He runs over there and says, "Hey." And I said, Pat, you dumbass. That's spring car root, not spotted car root. You brought me all the way to pick up a plant that's a weed in the low country. By your foot, in the Oregon gate. And there was Oregon right by his foot. You almost done it. So that's where I found my Oregon going up to West Virginia to photograph an orchid, which was the wrong orchid, and Pat was almost stepping on the plant I wanted. I really think twice about buying a book written by somebody that didn't know the difference between spotted and the other orchid, and almost stepped on one of the rarest plants we have. Anybody think about that before you buy this? So, we're on the way. So this is actually a very common plant in the low country. Spring car root, one of the many orchids in the low country. And we also wanted to honor all the state botanists that we could. This is my buddy John Nelson, who ran the herbarium in Carolina for a long time. And he and Doug Rayner named this Cycus caroliniana down in the Sandy Delta region. I've got a big project I'm working on called the cultural history of the Sandy Delta, trying to determine how these African Americans lived under the Delta. So I'll be in the Delta also looking for more populations of my buddy John Nelson's Cycus. So he and Doug Rayner named that plant to science. Chick Gaddy, probably a lot of you know Chick Gaddy. I know you know Chick Gaddy. This is Water River Trillium, Trillium Ustingii, Gaddy. Once again, we tried to include as many of the wildflowers in the book that were named by state botanists, because that's part of Pat and I have been studying the botany of the state for a long time, and we wanted to honor as many of our fellow botanists. So I included virtually every plant that I could think of that was identified by a state botanist. We also included chapters on some of the unusual plants. We have a chapter on carnivorous. We want somebody to study the chapter on carnivorous plants, so when they go out in the field, they'll have some idea about these unusual plants. So there's the mountain sweet pitcher plant, goes up in the mountains here. So we did a chapter on carnivorous plants. We modified the chapter I did before in the first book and brought it up to date. Well, Pat did it. Then we talk about fire in the low country, or fire in the community. Some of our rarest plants depend upon periodic or yearly fire. Without them, they're gone sooner or later. And that's Sandy Island and the Waccamaw River. Nature Conservancy bought it and started to do controlled burn. There you see a controlled burn. And they burn around the tree first where the red cockaded woodpecker is, and then the advancing fire comes along. And so Nature Conservancy began control burning on Sandy Island. And lo and behold, all of a sudden, some places popped up with a beautiful pitcher plant bog. They'd been repressed for years and years because the area had not been burned, So we have a chapter in the book on the role of fire. And I'll mention this again when I get to the latter part. So there is the pitcher plant bog of Sandy Island that came up after Nature Conservancy began to do periodic prescribed burning. Then the Carolina Bays, this is a bay in Sumter County called, this is Dial Bay right here. But this is Lewis, oh gosh.
Lewis Ocean. Lewis Ocean.
Lewis, no, that's, no. Come on, Frank, you know that I can't forgot the name of it.
It's in Sumter?
Which one?
You say in Sumter?
Yeah.
That big? It's not Dalzell.
It'll come here in a minute. Anyway, what has happened to many of the Carolina Bays is they were drained for farmland. There's another one here, right here. So a lot of us are trying to restore, and I'll mention that again in a minute, restore Carolina Bays. That's Frank may tell you about that in a little while. But this shows you what's happened to many Carolina Bays, and it concerns us because they're some of the most beautiful sites for wildflowers. So a lot of us now are trying to restore, not only preserve the Carolina Bays, but also to save the ones we have in their natural state. So there is Woods Bay State Park. Woods Bay State Park. Okay. There's Woods Bay State Park in Sumter County. I think that's the airplane I flew, and that's one of the ones that Pat photographed. There's another Carolina Bay, that has a coast. Now, Carolina Bay is not a community. A lot of people think a Carolina Bay is a plant community. A Carolina Bay is a geological formation, not a community. There's different kinds of communities that can occur in a Carolina Bay. I'll show you a couple of them. Here's a Carolina Bay, which has a Pocosin habit. It's peat-based with a Pocosin habit, a very dense mass of ericaceous shrubs. It's almost impossible to be able to get through it. So there you see evergreen shrub bog or Pocosin in the camp. Only a botanist would love that site. Only a botanist would go in there. I used to take my cadets out there all the time. I'd lose a few of them. I'd go the next year and I'd hear, I can't find the money out now. We've been out there a year or so, lost out in Pocosin. So that's Pocosin in the Low Country. And it's food flower. Some of our most unusual, beautiful wildflowers occur down in Pocosin, in a Carolina Bay. Sweet Bay, Loblolly Bay, all down in my bays. And then sometimes we have a depression meadow in the Carolina Bay. That's the edge of the bay is over here. Oh, dang it. Wrong way. The edge of the bay is over here. That's the depression meadow. When it rains, the water stays in there a long period of time. When it dries up, the plants are still there. They come back up next year. So a depression meadow has a beautiful display of wildflowers, such as you see the hooded pitcher plant. So this is another type of habitat in the Carolina Bay that we're trying to preserve the bays because of this beautiful type of habitat. And we also, again, cover little rural habitats where the plants that become very weedy. We also cover not only the non-native ones, the popcorn tree, but also native plants that have tended to become weedy as we disturb the habitat, the natural habitat where they occur. I think all of y'all know that. So we include a chapter on the rural plants, not only the non-native, but also the native ones that you tend to find more often out in disturbed sites, such as the Man of the Earth. Now, here's the next book. What we do in a wildflower book, you know that. What the idea is in a wildflower book is to get you interested in wildflowers, get you to love wildflowers, get you to understand wildflowers. That's the first step. Now what we do is get you to help us save the wildflowers. So I'm writing a book now called A Guide to Saving South Carolina's Rarest Native Wildflowers. That's the book I'm working on. And we have almost every botanist in the state. There's Pat, where's Pat's down here somewhere. There's Pat. Here's my lady friend over, Elizabeth. She's my go-to now. She gets me around, helps me in the field. I have 2 knee replacements, so I'm a little slow now. So she helps me out in the field. So this is the book that we're working on now. It's been a year on it so far. We've got many of the rarest plants already worked into the book. So I hope by this time next year, this book will finish. It will tell you which plants are the rarest, which ones are disappearing, and some of the ways that we can bring these plants back. I know y'all know all this, but we want to make sure we get all this documented. So that is the new book that I'm working on, a guide to save our native wildflowers. And I don't think it's the same as it's all got the state botanist out in Pepe. This is Samantha, you know her. Anyway, she works up here. Somewhere in Green, you know her there. So she'll help me in the mountains. I got people in the coastal plain, we got Keith Brad, the state botanist. We have all of us trying to work to produce this book. I just thought about it last year, and I'm still trying to get the overall concept. I've got 300 pages already written. So there's still a lot more to do. But that's the book I'm working on. Now, let's go over this very briefly. We come up with many ways to actually save our wildflowers. The role of herbaria, you know, herbaria, we put plants in, they've been in there for 100 years. We go back and look at the labels and tell what kind of plants were found. Private state easements, my farm, Todd Manning, I put an easement on it, and I've got a bay I'm trying to restore. The role of wildlife, wildflower book, the wildflower book, there we go. So you'll be introduced to what the wildflowers look like. Field work to identify new species. We've already talked about that. How many new species I showed you a minute ago that state botanists have been working on. We still do not have a full grasp of the variety of wildflowers in the state of South Carolina. We're still going out and finding new species. That's why the field work is so important. Then we have monitoring. The book I'm working on now. I've got to go check all the populations of these plants we have recorded in the past. We go out every year for 2 or 3 years and see if those plants are still there. Field monitoring, field monitoring. Very soon now in the spring, I'll be going out checking the populations of plants that we've recorded in the past and seeing if they are still there. I'll come back to that in a minute. And training new field botanists, for my word. All the money from this book goes to Clemson, the botanical garden. The other wildflower book, all the money went to set up a scholarship at Clemson. I've written 9 books. And that's how much money I made from the 9 books. That was 4 scholarships. So all the money from that book and the new book will go to Clemson to establish scholarships to help Clemson train field botanists. We have to have new people in the field. Oh, I can't do this much longer. I'm 85 years old, but I'm still going strong, but I'm sorry, I can't say. You don't like to tell people how old I am. But in this case, we need new people coming along. We've got to have them. So if that scholarship I set up gets 1 student out in the field, then it's a success. Let's see. Fire, I already talked about fire in the landscape, vanishing some of the landscapes we have are gone. The prairie land in the Piedmont. That was a vast prairie land with Bill Springer. You know all about that. There you go. Much of it's gone. We're trying to bring that back, trying to restore some of the prairie land. Restoring that communities. Can't see. Habitat management. Oh my word. We have to manage these lonely pine forests. They have to be burned. If they don't burn naturally, we have to go out and do prescribed burning. So these are the things, and the last one down there is plant rescue. Every now and then, we can't stop a development. We go out and collect. What's the most famous one that we moved? Talked a minute ago. Oconee Bells. Remember they moved a lot of it from where Lake Geography was going? That's plant rescue. So I'll tell you about one more in a minute. So these are the kind of things that we're talking about. Each one of these topics will be addressed in an essay, how we need to go out on the tools that we have to protect our native plants. Oh, there's my cousin, Henry Ravenel. Looks sort of like, that's my great granduncle. So I go back in history. I do a lot of work in history, what these botanists in the past times found. And there's a plant that he found, Eriocolon ravenelii. He found it in his plantation where Lake Moultrie now sits. Lake Moultrie was a Seneca lake made in 1942. And that's where he found Eriocolon ravenelii. Never been seen in the state since. It goes down in Florida, but no one's ever found it. I'm not looking for it now. In the fall, I'll be trying to find it. But because of him, we know the plant. That's what was first identified. So there's a lot of material in herbarium records that help us. And here's another plant, the Eriocolon ravenelii he found. Pat and I refound it, and now it's actually in the native plant nursery trade. So you can now buy Eriocolon ravenelii or Ravenel the Eriocolon in a nursery now. So that's the way that we've come out to save some of these plants. There's a longhorn habenaria. I found that plant in 1962 down at the Webb Wildlife Center when I did a PhD dissertation. That's the only place it's ever been found. We've been back there year after year after year after year, and never seen it again. So it's probably gone. It might be now called extirpated from the state. No one's ever found it since, but that's a rare orchid, Longhorn Haven area. I'll go back again in August, see if I can find it, and if I can't find it, that'll be the last time before the book. But that's the Longhorn, but Ravenel found it. And there's his specimen. He found it, Sandy Canal, Berkeley County, I forgot the date, back in 1800. So looking at that specimen, I think there's some areas of oak woods around the fringe of Lake Moose Creek. Where the Lake Moose Creek is the lake that flooded the Sandy Canal, where Ravenel had his migration house and where he studied. So maybe I'll go back and check the one at the Belmont Center or Web Center. But there are a few areas around. I didn't know he found it until Pat sent this to me just long ago. So there's one more player using herbarium records. The records that people made when they collected plants eons ago, back in 1800s. We use those as sort of a guide to help us look at some of the rare plants. And so that's another plant that I'll be, but it's never been seen in the state ever since I found it, and nobody else has found it anywhere else. It's one little population down in the Web Center, and there's the yellow fringed orchid, yellow fringeless orchid. Now, back in the 80s and 90s, I could find that plant very common. At about a dozen places where I collected it and made herbarium specimens. We looked last year, we found one population. None of the sites that I found it in did it come up again. So what's happening to this orchid? Is it climate change? Is it habitat? People digging it up? We don't know. But I do know that in my lifetime, my career, the fringeless or the yellow fringed orchid has declined greatly. It may not be. So we found, looking for it last year, we found one population of this orchid. I checked all the sites. Over the years, I made herbarium collections, so we collected it, and so I went back to all these sites last year, and we only found it in one place. Well, this is why herbarium records are so important, and this is why the book that we write, the Rare Plant book, is going to be based on our field work. Not only the work we did before, but to go out the next year or 2 years and check all these sites and try to come up with what's going on with the rare wildflowers. Are they really disappearing? Which ones are disappearing? Do we need to take any steps? I can't tell you what we're going to conclude, but this is what we want to do to see what the state, we've got 90 plants we're following. 90 plants, we can tell the rarest one that we're following in the book so far. And we've got to do new species. We've got to go out and look. We need people in the field. This is an orchid called Aiken leaf trillium. Now, Pat and I were down at the bomb plant. You'll call it Van Riverside. To me, it's always been the bomb plant. But anyway, he and I found this orchid years ago. And we weren't certain what it was. We thought it was just the same thing as the Carolina leaf trillium. So we sent it to this farmer, and she identified it as something new. She called it Trillium, can't see it anyway, Telemacola. But she never published it. She put it in her dissertation, but she never made an official publication in a journal. If you do not publish a new species in the journal where it's reviewed by peers, then it's not accepted in the scientific field. So Pat and Keith Bradley have now taken it over and will try to identify it and make it known as a new species. And if it is, it's one of the rarest plants you have. There's a dozen specimens in a little swamp in the Samantha River site. No one's seen it anywhere else. So a plant like that is so rare, but but we have to be out in the field. We've got to train new field botanists. And that's one reason why I set up one scholarship. I can't do but one, and so that we have to have new field botanists. So we're out there in the field identifying plants that have gone unnoticed over these years. There's my little shrub ghost flower. One of the places in the state I know it of is a little xeric habitat along in the Francis Marion Forest. So I love that little plant. It's not the white plants, it's not the, anyway, that's what's called Monotropa burtonii, occurs out in these xeric sands. We know it from only one site in the Francis Marion Forest. I've been out 2 years in a row. Of course, next year, that'll give me 3 years data. Well, I have a 4th year, or not, I don't know, but most of these plants, we've got a 3-year data while we work on this book to see the status of what's happening to these plants. We'll cover some of the disjunct species. That's a pawpaw. Occurs down in Florida. Sling-leaf pawpaw. It skips Georgia. We know of one site in Charleston County in a maritime forest. Only place we've ever found it. So that's a disjunct species. So even though it may be more common in Florida, since we're on this range, now we want to also see if we can understand what has brought these plants. How they spread in the low country, how do they spread anywhere. I have a feeling that this plant, see the fruit, the pawpaw, not the normal pawpaw. This is the different pawpaw. This is the sling-leaf pawpaw. The fruit, I believe, was used for food by Native Americans. They collected it in Florida, brought it up, and planted it along the coastline of South Carolina. That's a very real possibility. Native Americans traded all kinds of things. So my theory is it's right on a creek on Wildflower Island. That's the only place we've ever seen it. So I believe, and I'm going to state in the book that I believe it was brought up by Native Americans, but still, it's known just for one area along Wildflower Island in the state. So those are the kind of things we'll try to cover on each plant. Something about the history. How can we go back into history, Native American history, see if we can find that they use these plants, perhaps they moved them around, that's how they got here, that's part of what we're trying to do. And of course, habitat loss. Liz and I were down on Botany Bay Island not too long ago, and you can see ocean rise. We don't know what the climate change is going to do to all our plant populations. We will be around to see the end, but we do know that there are plenty of habitats like that, where some of these Native American shell mounds occur that are slowly washing away. Whether sea level rise or just not, I'm not going to answer that right now, but we do have a lot of areas of habitat loss, and that's one of them. And then my Carolina Bay, I'm restoring the Carolina Bay. Here is the bay when I bought it. Sweet gum, pine trees. Had somebody come in, cut it all out. You know, had to kill the sweet gum. I'm going to introduce Oxylus canmii, federally native species, into the bay, which you can see when it rains, these beautiful aquatic plants. But we finally got rid of most of the sweet gum, trying to kill that. But Carolina Bay restoration, and bringing in some of these rare plants into this new habitat we're creating. So I've taken Carolina Bay and restored it as much as possible to a natural community. And this is the last plant I'll mention. This plant was found in 1928 outside of Somerville. Nobody has ever seen it since. It occurs in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey. Liz and I are going up hopefully, because I want to see it. I've never seen it. Look for it all my life. And whether we can legally can collect some of the seeds, maybe bring them back, introduce it somewhere here. I don't know whether the state has to do, but there's certain plants like in my bucket list. I just want to see this narcissus. I've looked for it all my life in the low country. We have the habitat, but you can see how what a beautiful plant it is. But it was found in 1928 in a savanna outside of Somerville, in Dorchester County. Never been seen. Why was that one population there? Nobody has any idea. But there may be a possibility if I get up to New Jersey, they'll let me take some of the seeds. Maybe I can bring some back and see if I can develop a population somewhere along the coastline. All right. Woo! That's a glass of water, isn't it? All right. That took you through the Wildflower book, and hopefully the new book coming out in 2 or 3 years. So, anybody have any questions for the old man here before I get it?
I'd get rid of the sweet gum.
Sir?
I'd get rid of the sweet gum.
There's no way to get rid of street gum. You can bush hog it, you can pull it up. There's no way to get rid of street gum that you spray. But you saw the green growth, didn't do any harm to any of the plants in the bed. So if you got a street gum problem, you may not want to use chemicals, but if you don't, you're gonna lose the bed, but street gum will take over. The more you bush hog it, the more it spreads. So I had to use chemicals to get rid of it. Over here, I'm a little hard of hearing, I'm gonna walk over where you are and I'll repeat your question.
Most of the folks here probably know this answer, but I don't. What's the purpose of control burning?
Control burning, puts nutrients in the soil, gets rid of the competition for the other plants. Mainly getting rid of competition, of if you don't burn a pine savanna, next thing you know, it's a hardware part.
Aren't you burning the thing you want growing also?
I could hear you.
Aren't you burning whatever you want to grow also?
No, when you burn it one time, I mean, the plants in these lonely savannas, they are fire resistant. They have their rhizomes down in the soil. The rhizomes down in the soil, they can survive burning. They can survive burning, because they'll come up and you burn it in the wintertime, in the springtime, all these plants are back. But if you don't burn it over a period of time, hardwoods take over in the plants you want to eliminate. Bill, you've done that well, right?
The community farm under, correct?
Right.
And so in a lot of cases, regular fire was conditions that created these natural habitat.
Yeah, the fire was always been a component of the coastal plain. It's the fire maintaining area. Lightning set fires. We didn't have roads. So if one lightning strike started a fire, it burned from one river to the next. So the coastal plain was even the prairie land up in the Piedmont too. Fire has been a normal component of the savanna lands and the grasslands forever. Native Americans set the fires, lightning set fires. So some of these plants evolved with fire in the habitat. That's why when they burned Sandy Island, got rid of all the competing vegetation in the hardwoods, up came all those beautiful wildflowers. But in that Carolina Bay I cleared, it was a sweet gum forest, a loblolly, a pine forest. There was virtually no plants in there. I cleared it, burned it, and all of a sudden we had a lush growth. I think there were 50-something species of plants that John Nelson identified in my Carolina Bay. Virtually none of them were there before I cleared it and began burning. They've been in the soil forever how long?
When do you expect your new book to come out on non-heritage plants?
Well, the new book, I hope to finish up all the work by the end next fall. In probably a year, 2 years after that. It's about 3 years away. It takes a while. Once you actually get the book, it takes them a year or so to get it into publication. So we got one more full year of writing and field work. I hope that's it. Then it goes to USD Press not too long after that. So 2 to 3 years, I hope it'll be finished. That's my goal anyway. But I'm doing another book at the same time, so I've got to go back and forth as much as I can.
With the fall call, that, you find this junk from
Flora,
Florida,
right.
has there been any DNA comparisons between the two populations?
No, but that's one tool. I didn't put under one tool to help identify. It may be a new species. I don't have time to do that. But if it's something you can do, it'd be interesting.
Yes.
But DNA would certainly, tell us some of what we're looking for. If it's like, it might be a whole new species for all I know.
They tell you the time, the distance between when the two
Right, yeah.
populations were
It may have been separate so long as a new species. Anybody want to work on it? I don't know. I thought about it too. Good point. Over here.
About the thing. You said they were like geologic?
Carolina Bay is a geological formation. Then you go search the pressures in the coastal plain soil. Nobody knows what formed them. Some people believe they're from a meteorite. What do you want? I know. he's on a committee to preserve South Carolina Bay. Most people think you were formed, I know you don't believe this, but 2 million years ago, the shoreline of the Atlantic Ocean were the sand hills of the state. That was the shoreline of our state. That's where the Atlantic Ocean was. And then it began a retreat all the way to offshore the continental shelf. It's coming back, by the way. You know where it's going? It's heading back to Columbia. You don't believe it? Hang around for a while. We've had one of the problems down there in the family. That's what the other thing is going. But when you had a barren landscape, wind and way back that somehow probably shaped the Carolina Bay, that's maybe spring, that's the best you can come up with. But they were not formed by meteorites.
Is this, do they only form in South Carolina?
Tip of Maryland, New Jersey, North Carolina, Georgia, little tip of Florida. The coastal plain of those states, and just the coastal plain, not the Piedmont. They form such patterns, they're clumped, certain areas, there's no way meteorites will send patterns with these bays. They have some kind of terrestrial formation, but nobody has come up with a theory that answers all the questions, so they are an unsolved, puzzling geological phenomena. How's that? But they're some of the most beautiful sites. They are wetland depressions. They don't drain. You realize not so long ago, I think Supreme Court said these isolated wetlands don't have any protection. I don't want to go there. We won't go there. So they don't really have any legal protection. I think, did our state come up with a, it didn't, okay. Anyway, they're isolated. They don't have a drainage. So they fill up with water, then dry up, fill up with water, dry up. But people have been trying to figure out what formed them for years. I don't know how many. There's the fish school theory that the fish were fanning the beds offshore in the ocean. Fascinating. All right, so those are the mysterious Carolina bays of the Carolina looking. When I bought my farm, I didn't realize I had a bay on it, so I went to the store. You want to tell them what you're trying to do with your project?
Yeah, you may know, I'm the president of Natural Land Trust.
Maybe come up here. See if you can hold still.
Yeah, as many of you know, our land trust in this area, Natural Land Trust, we've been for 51 years now protecting the mountains, including the Piedmont and bunched areas. But a few years ago, just because we couldn't resist it and nobody else would do it, we started a project of Natural Land Trust to try to protect Carolina bays. And we do own 2 now. We own part of Dalzell Bay in Sumter County, which some people call Dazzling Bay. It's a cypress, pond cypress bay. And then we also have a Loblolly Bay in Marion County, which is called, used to be called Wolf Bay. You know where that is. It has big Loblolly Bay trees. And we're looking, this spring, we're going to hire somebody to work on this project. And what we hope to do is protect more bays, 1, by acquisition. 2, to restore bays that aren't in good shape. And 3, to help people, agencies, nonprofits, others who own bays to manage them properly. Because as Dr. Porcher said, a bay might be protected, but if it is not subject to burning, or if the ditching isn't corrected, or if other management techniques are not used, you'll lose the ecological functioning of the bay, even though it is technically protected. So we've got an informal committee, and we are working on that effort. The Native Plant Society, we own 2 bays. No, we only own.
Matthews, Lewis Bay, and Kingsbury.
We don't own Lewis. What is Lewis Bay?
Lewis Bay down in.
These are
That's where
folks.
it's at.
Oh, no, that's Lewis Ocean Bay. That's a DNR heritage site. We own 2, Lisa Matthews Bay in Bamberg, and I was down there on Saturday.
Kingsburg Bay.
And then Kingsburg Bay in Florence County, which this is a long story, but that got preserved because I was sitting in a presentation like this 20 years ago. He made a presentation. He cited Kingsburg Bay as the best remaining meadow depression bay in South Carolina. And that he had identified a eupatorium new to science. And so I raised my hand afterwards and I said, well, is anybody protected? He said, I don't know. We told DNR about it. So then I began a years-long project to protect that bay. And finally, we got it into ownership of the Native Plant Society about 4 years ago. And two great volunteers, Sudie Thomas and Lisa Lord, have led the effort. We acquired it, clear cut it, because it had grown up in woody vegetation, established the fire lines, and we have contracted to get it burned, but it's rained so doggone much in the PD, they have not been able to burn it. But I hope somebody listened to what he was saying and will try to protect something that he referred to. But I would alert Elizabeth, Dr. Porcher, if you see any bays that are for sale and subject or might be for sale, subject to protection, let us know.
That's what we have to have.
Right, and Richard, how many Carolina bays have been lost? And what number of Carolina bays do we have now?
Well, we actually, the question is, how many Carolina bays have lost and how many do we have now? We actually sort of know the answer to that question. There were thousands and thousands and thousands of bays. It's estimated now there might be 200 plus that are in some status of remaining, and probably 50 to 100 that are really pristine.
So
Left.
cleared for agriculture, like,
Right. So you'll see them on the landscape as he showed him, they're just farm fields now. Now, maybe we could restore them, but we're aiming at the ones that are either pristine or are altered, but could be more easily returned.
Except organizations like the Plant Society, Nature Land Trust, and I'm sure there's some down along the coast as well. There is no protection other than concerned citizens saying, we don't want you to develop this bay.
That's correct. Even when we had Clean Water Act protection for these bays for a short period of time during the Obama administration. But even then, there were agricultural and forestry exemption of the Clean Water Act. We, for a while, had Pollution Control Act protection in South Carolina for a short while. There is going to be introduced this year, we hope, a bill in the legislature to give the bays regulatory protection. But really, that's one reason we started this initiative. It's about the only way to protect them is to buy them or get other people to protect them. Now, incidentally, the Nature Conservancy, Open Space Institute, Low Country Open Land Trust, DNR have purchased bays normally incidentally, but now DNR does have some bay preserves. But we wanted to have a conservancy focused on protecting this resource. So that's what we're trying to create.
now, if you have a bay that's been modified or changed, NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service, will actually come up some of the cost to restore it, meaning drop the ditches. So the bay I had, and they came in with a machine, walked the ditch that drained it, and then we took the machine and cleared out the trees. So there is funds and there in NRCS if you have a Carolina bay on your property that has been disturbed and you're willing to put some kind of easement on it also. That's the best tool right now.
If you're not familiar with the Carolina Bays, there's a really beautiful picture and with good description of the bays. It's called the Carolina Bays. Should be in a library. If not, see me. I have a copy of it. I'll be willing to lend it to you, but it really does get you into realizing what a unique environment this is.
What's going online in North Carolina Bay. But be careful, they'll tell you that it was formed by meteorites and fish food and beavers and everything.
And you'll call up 5 or 6 real estate developments in the low country called Carolina Bay.
Full of, Lewis Ocean Bay Heritage Preserve. They got many of them preserved in that Myrtle Beach area. But no question, before I lose my voice entirely. All right, thank you very much.
For bearing with me on that microphone. You did a great job, but next time I'll bring a rope.
Or what do you hook around your neck?
Yeah, I thought about that.